Oh, here we go. This is good. You know, this one's going to make a lot of people mad. Let's look at this one. This is great. Top 10 changes that made WoW better after vanilla WoW. Okay. Here we go. Yeah, that'll be perfect.
In this video, we'll go over 10 things that existed in vanilla WoW, but were made better later on in WoW's history.
Okay.
In number 10, we have the stealth mechanic. Stealth in vanilla WoW reduced your movement speed by 50%,
True.
and there is a high chance mobs can detect you.
True.
Even if you're like 10 or 15 yards away.
True.
Unless you took talents which made your stealth better, or wore pieces of gear or had racials that could increase it.
Yep.
Rogues had a talent called Master of Deception, with 5 ranks, each one making your stealth better.
I remember this.
By reducing the chance enemies have to detect you while you're stealth.
I think you even got like
And this was considered
enchants for
a
it and
good
shit,
talent,
right? Maybe
because
not.
of how bad the baseline stealth was. With higher ranks of stealth, druids and rogues could go a little bit faster than 50%, but you could never go the full 100% run speed with their classes, specs, and talents.
Okay.
You were always just moving slower than normal. Then later on in WoW's history, they removed the slow penalty to stealth and gave stealth max ranks of Master of Deception-like talents by default. So you can sneak right past a mob in stealth of similar level to you, and as long as you don't touch them, they won't notice you. Which is amazing compared to the vanilla WoW stealth.
I don't like it.
And also a pretty minor thing on a whole, and that's why it's only the number 10 spot. Number 9, gathering time.
Nope. No. 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 Okay. Imagine this. Let's say I'm trying to sneak up on somebody. I'm like this. You ever try to sneak up on a bird in a McDonald's parking lot because you're trying to catch it? You go like that. You don't fucking walk around. How do you run faster whenever you're sneaking? You don't. That's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. Are you really? Is it better? Is it better that it doesn't even make any fucking sense? Like, stealth should make you slower. It doesn't mean that you're invisible. The difference between invisibility and stealth. In current WoW, there's no fucking difference. No. Like, if you're trying to be stealthy, if you're stomping around, yeah, obviously people are gonna hear you. And that's what happens. Like, they actually have made it in the game now where you move faster as stealth. How the fuck does that make any sense? Are you in some kind of alternate dimension where like all the other invisible boys are just going a little bit faster? No, you're fucking not. I hate that, because that means that rogues can hunt you down while they're in stealth. You can't predict where a rogue is going to be at all. It's terrible for world PvP. It's dog shit. Stealth should be the way that it was in vanilla WoW, 110%. It actually made it some sort of like a skill, that it was skill-based rather than, oh, I'm just fucking invisible. I am so sick of that. Stealth for rogues is OP as fuck now, and it was completely fine in vanilla and BC. It's so strong. It's way too strong. And it doesn't even make any fucking sense.
Gathering herbs could take about a 5-second cast time, and it had a chance to fail.
Okay.
Gathering ore didn't take as long of a cast time, but you had to do it multiple times on the same node of ore.
Exactly.
Which also...
Because it made sense! It made sense. If you've got a giant rock and you're trying to beat the copper out of it, you're not going to beat it all out in one hit. You've got to wait. You've got to... Look how big the rock is. There's multiple rocks you've got to pick out of it. Like, why did you just get all of it at the same time?
I thought you were watching this shit to make chat mad, not yourself, you dumbass.
Because I don't agree. That's so dumb, dude. You know that's dumb. Like, you have to beat through the rock.
No, yeah. I think it's a good change.
Wrong. No, it's not. It doesn't make any sense, McConnell. Like, what sense does it make that you can just hit the mine a couple of times and you just get all the ore out of it? It's a mine.
It's a node.
Wait, what are you even talking about?
Okay, dude,
like,
here's the fucking...
He's pissed off that they changed them. No. You're pissed off that they changed it so you only have to mine it one time. Mine a node one time.
Because it doesn't make any sense.
That's true. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, McConnell. You're outnumbered 2-1. You're outvoted. You're wrong. We're right.
Apparently I'm not wrong, because that's how it actually is in the game, and the devs agree with me. So
Yeah.
get fucked.
Well, you know what? They took Doom Guards out of the game too. And you know what? Paladins weren't able to bubble hearth for a while, even though that was a staple of the game. And then they brought that back into the game because it made sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
Devs don't know anything.
Hey,
Okay.
devs added LFR.
Yeah, they added LFR.
I mean, that should be the end of the discussion right there.
Didn't they acknowledge that that was a bad move?
Ghostcrawler actually did say it was a mistake to add LFR. He said one of his biggest regrets whenever he worked at Blizzard was adding LFR.
You know what his other biggest regret should have been? Whenever he said nerf paladins to the ground. I'll never forget Grosscaller.
I can't
I
believe
can't even say his name right.
Esfon says this. Meanwhile, rep paladins were gods in Wrath. They were gods.
Yeah. But you know what? They made them so good that I got bored and I quit the game.
I'm sure.
That's what happened.
This is so fucking ridiculous. Yeah, rep paladins were
Look,
fucking
he said
gods.
to the ground, baby. I will never forget. I will never forget Ghostcrawler. I'll never.
Had a chance to fail. Gathering materials out in the open world to complete quests also had really long cast times.
Yes.
And could take up to 5 seconds on average per item.
Go outside and try and pick up a plant and tell me how long it takes. It takes, it's like 2 seconds. It takes like at least like 5 or 10 seconds. Like 5 seconds makes sense. And yeah, obviously you don't fly away on a phoenix either, but let's have a little bit of continuity.
Whereas today, if you have the enchant on your gloves, you can gather herbs in half a second. Same with mining or skinning. Gathering items out in the open world never takes more than 2 seconds, unless it's for special items that has a long cast time for RP purposes.
Exactly.
Number 8, tracking. Did you know if you had the ability to track herbs or mining nodes, you had to open up your spellbook and click on the ability to activate tracking on your map? There wasn't a dropdown on your mini-map like there is today. That wasn't added until the Burning Crusade in patch 2.3.
Okay.
And even then, they didn't have the ability to track mailboxes or innkeepers or other useful people out in the world until an even later date in WoW's history. Having tracking on the minimap is just much more convenient, especially if you're playing a hunter and have multiple ways to track different mobs. Number 7, the clock and...
Again, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You know how you can track dragonkin hunters? They look at their prints. Do you know how you can track beasts and humanoids? You look at their prints. You can smell them. That's how you do it. What are all these question marks for? You guys fucking stupid? That's how hunters in real life do it too. It's not confusing at all. Since when do mailboxes leave footprints? They don't. Listen, I do want to say one last thing. The tracking, I think that they should have had it in a drop-down menu. That was a good change. But making you able to track mailboxes was not a good change.
Calendar. Before a late patch in the Burning Crusade, there was not an in-game clock. And instead, you just had a little icon which would show you a sun or moon to denote day or nighttime cycle.
I like there not being an in-game clock, because that way I didn't have that reminder right next to me knowing how much time I was wasting. Because I could play WoW and be full screened and I would totally forget about time. Oh, I would. I would totally forget. But now they have the in-game clock that you can see. That's much more obvious. But I do think the way they changed the minimap probably was good. Yeah, I will agree the minimap changes were good.
There also wasn't a calendar, and most people would organize raid events with each other by using either a third-party website
I
or
like
an
the guild
add-on,
calendar.
which Blizzard eventually added to the game.
Yeah, I did like that.
And functioned basically exactly like the add-on that everyone used.
Yes.
Number 6, raid flexibility.
Nope, I already know what he's gonna say. Nope, totally fucking wrong.
In Vanilla WoW, you needed exactly 40 people for raids,
That's right.
which a lot of people think was a great plus.
That's right.
And for a lot of legitimate reasons that I agree somewhat with.
Yep.
There's also some places that only need 20, some that need
Yep.
10. Basically, for a long time, you needed an exact amount of people to enter raid groups.
Yep.
But with the new flex system that works on normal and heroic mode, you only need 10 to 30 people. But you still do need exactly 20 people to do the hardest mode,
That's
Mythic.
right.
Being able to flexibly include up to 30 people is just so much better for scheduling raids, where real people have conflicts that make it so they can't show up. And you don't have to sit people on the bench who will get mad and eventually leave. It just solves a lot of the human problems that come with organizing a raid group. Of course, for the most hardcore people out there, they do still have to deal with an exact amount of 20 people, which is understandable because they're doing the hardest content in the game. But the option to have flexible raiding on the other two much more used modes is a very nice convenience.
No, it's not. Here's why. It's because back in the day, if you were trying to get a group for ICC 25 and you had 23 people, Billy the dipshit, level 80 hunter, strength gems in his gear, you invited him because there was no one else. You had to take him. Having the caps on the raids indirectly created a system where bad players would get invited more often to raids because people needed to meet the different requirements for the raids and the amount of people. It happened all the time in Wrath. There were so many fucking times that there was some dumb ass piece of shit that we were like, he'll message. I remember at the beginning of us forming the raid, he'd be like, hey man, hey, I gotta get in here, man. I want to get in here, maybe get a bot from Arda. You know, he just no fucking idea. We're like, oh God, you know, please don't let us make sure to invite him, right? And he's a fucking just absolute piece of shit. So we go all the way through, right? And we invite everybody else, and we're ignoring this guy for an hour. An hour we spent ignoring this guy. He's still sending us messages. Finally, we get up to 21 people. There's no one else to invite. We send him a message. All right, man. We're going to take you. Oh, man, you finally responded. Okay, cool, man. I'm so ready. And then he gets into the raid. He does bottom DPS. And we still carry him because he's better than nobody. Now, bad players don't get carried. Having the forced sizes of the raid gave you a reason to carry bad players because they were better than nothing, usually.
Number 5, max level talent trees. Now, this is a pretty controversial thing to praise, but just hear me out on it.
Okay.
Old school talent trees, I believe, were much better for leveling up and had a
True.
niche distinction of allowing some hybrid spec play.
That's very true.
For some classes anyway.
That's
but
very
once you
true.
hit max level, there wasn't much choice with your talent points. You could go down your specs tree and grab all the useful abilities and talents, and then just ignore all the ones that weren't as good. You couldn't really change your playstyle or any of your abilities without changing specs. But with max level talent trees, you actually do get a little bit of choice with picking what abilities you want and what you want to specialize in for the spec you're in.
That is true.
If you're on a fight that has lots of AoE,
That is true.
you can change your talent points around to have better AoE, without having to swap to the better AoE spec. If there's a boss mechanic that does a lot of damage for a short period of time, you can swap your talents to pick better defensives. If you're healing a fight where people are at low health often, you can change your talents to pick up one which will take advantage of that. Or if you're like me and hurt one of your hands.
This stress test is so bad. You start off dead on the character select screen. I mean, this is impressive. I mean, you're already dead. You haven't even started the game. Oh my God. The name is unavailable. Okay, let me see if I can just take an invite. Let's just try and start up and get into here. Come on, let's go, let's go, let's go. It's not working. All right, I do want to talk about the, I'm trying to get this to work though. So, max level talent trees. Let me finish.
You can just pick a whole bunch of passive abilities to reduce the amount of buttons you need to press.
Yes, that's what I do.
The talent trees we have now are just more flexible in endgame content than the old school talent trees where you basically had set places where you spent your points, and you couldn't change your rotation or what abilities you choose anywhere near as effectively as the talent trees we have today.
That's true.
But at the same time, I do really miss the old school talent tree whenever I'm leveling a new character.
Of course.
As the ones we have now are really boring, as you only get a new ability once every 15 levels or so. So it's not a perfect system, but for endgame content specifically, I believe it is better than the old talent trees.
I'd probably agree with that, honestly. Here's what I think they should do. They should have 2 different levels of talent trees, right? They should have your talents and your traits. And your talent tree, it should be like the old talent tree. And then your traits, I think we should have both systems. Like both systems at the same time. Rather than just having one of them. If I had to say. I'd really like to see that. And I'd like to see both systems. Yeah, so you unlock your traits at max level, maybe through like some quests and like, high-end like max level content, kind of like attunements, so you can make your character as good as possible. Then you have your talent tree that you level up with. And both of those interact together, and you're able to customize your character even more than you were able to even now or then. That's what I would prefer. Like glyphs? Yeah, kind of like glyphs, but more impactful.
Number 4. More complex raid fights. Raids have been adding more mechanics and becoming more complicated to do over time, whereas vanilla WoW raids had mechanics about on par as LFR does today.
Yes.
In fact, some LFR bosses are actually more complicated than some of the raid bosses in vanilla WoW. The thing that made raids in vanilla WoW more difficult was just a lot of other factors in the game at the time, and not really the mechanics of the raid fights themselves.
That's true.
For some of them anyway. There were absolutely some raid fights that had intricate mechanics like we do today.
No, it's like 3.
But that was more of an exception than it was the norm, though. In raiding today, that's one of the few things WoW players agree on, is that raid fights are good. And it's really hard to get WoW players to agree on anything.
Yeah, well, there's less raiders to agree about the raids being good now. I mean, like, most people don't even do the fights. They don't care. The problem, I've said this like 1,000 times, I think a big reason why a lot of people quit in Cataclysm is the raids were too hard. Like, you compare Wrath of the Lich King raids to Cataclysm raids were infinitely more difficult. They made the raids too hard in Cataclysm. The issue with WoW, the thing with WoW is the difficulty in raids used to be centered around getting into the raid. Whereas now, it's centered around the raid itself. Firelands? Oh yeah, I'm sure you were able to complete Heroic Rag. But I mean, like, to be fair, Heroic Rag was like a separate difficulty all in itself. Firelands was relatively difficult, but it was a lot hard. The first tier is mainly the one I'm talking about, like, right, tier 11. Tier 11, the difficulty jump between tier 10, ICC, and tier 11 was massive, especially whenever you're talking about people having the 30% buff in ICC, which they had for, like, the majority of the time. So, I actually think that them making raids harder was bad for the game. I think the raids nowadays are too hard. And the way that they solve that problem by having this overload of mechanics that people have to deal with is by just making the damage from those mechanics cosmetic. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't do any damage. Like, I mean, unless you're doing something on like high level heroic at the beginning of the tier or on mythic, the damage doesn't even do anything. And I'm very, very disappointed about that. Palav with the 1800 viewer host. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Yo, by the way, good luck getting into Classic Beta. It sucks that you're not in. I'm surprised they didn't invite you. Thank you very much for the host, man. Thank you, dude. Perfect example. Wait, what is this here? There's always going to be a meta spec. Old trees are better. I mean, like, in a lot of ways, yeah, but in some ways, no. I mean, like, it's more complex than that. Explain how a guy destroys metal robots in Westfall can break a rock in one swing. It's not about breaking the rock, Speedstorm. It's about extracting the valuable minerals from that rock. You don't even understand what's going on. Nice McCall, ret impression. Papega, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Listen, the point that I'm trying to make is that I think they made the raids too hard in Cataclysm, and because they made the raids too hard, they had to create a bunch of different difficulties because they were just too exclusive at that point. It was a mistake making raids that hard.
Vanilla WoW, the only way to gain experience was through killing monsters, turning in quests, and exploration, which gave an incredibly minor amount. So if you want to level up your character, you had to go out and quest and grind a ton of mobs, which isn't really that bad, unless you're doing it for the 10th time. Then you really want some alternative ways to level up a new character.
No, you don't.
And in the current game, in addition to the 3 ways of gaining experience from Vanilla WoW, you can also gain experience from battlegrounds, pet battles, gathering herbs and ore, finding treasures, completing a dungeon, and completing island expeditions.
I actually don't mind getting experience from Battlegrounds, and I think that alternate ways of leveling is completely fine. I don't think that's bad. Getting experience from pet battles, I don't see that as a negative. Like, who really gives a fuck? Personally, I don't think it's a big deal. I don't. Ruins twinking? Not really, no. I mean, I don't see how it ruins twinking. And also, I'll be honest, guys, I've always thought twinking was for bad players that couldn't handle it at max level.
I'm sure there's a few other I'm missing, but those are the major things you can do if you really don't want to quest or grind monsters.
Well, that's why twinking died, right? Like, just think about it. That's why they made the experience off Battlegrounds. Twinking died. Why did it die? Because the truth is that people just wanted to buy advantages over players that just started the game because they were too fucking shitty and they couldn't handle it at max level, where at least Blizzard tried to balance the game. Right? They wanted to play low-level BGs with less mechanics, less abilities, less things to focus on because they were bad at the game, and they wanted to beat people that not only were new to the game, but they also had a huge gear advantage over. So then as soon as they put those people on an even playing field with other people that were just as much of a pathetic loser as they were, then the twinking bracket died because that's the only thing that they ever wanted to do in the first place.
Considering how many people got banned with the XP potion stacking bug, players are really looking for new ways to level their characters. So having all of these alternatives, or just them being additions to the regular stuff, is a much welcome change to the game. Number 2, more endgame content. In Vanilla WoW, endgame content consisted of doing dungeons until you had gear good enough to go into raids, and then farming gold to supply those raids. Or grinding endlessly in the 3 battlegrounds for honor to get High Warlord. Once you got to a certain gear level, you no longer ran dungeons, and only people who played WoW as if it was a full-time job got the High Warlord title. So, besides those two things, raiding and PvP, you didn't really have anything else to do to advance the power of your character, or really anything fun to do besides that. But over time, they've added a ton of things to do at endgame, where now there's 3 major things you can do at max level. Raiding, Mythic plus Dungeons, and rated PvP, which includes arenas and battlegrounds. And outside of that, there's also a whole bunch of other, more minor things to do, like daily quests, world quests, the Brawlers Guild, an entire minigame within the game of pet battles. Most of these things are just things you can do to get gold and make slight progression to the power of your character, or just tough challenges to accomplish for the fun of it. Even if people like to claim there's nothing to do in the game, it's more like they just don't want to do the things that are in the game, where there is a lot more to do at endgame than there was in Vanilla WoW. But it probably doesn't seem like it since you spent most of that time at max level grinding something out, as there was a lot of grinds to do in Vanilla WoW, for reputations, weapon skills, professions, and gold for the vast amounts of consumables you needed to raid. And finally, number 1.
Okay. I'd rather have Vanilla WoW endgame than BFA endgame, because at least I care about Vanilla WoW endgame. It makes it there's a point to it. There's an end. There's some sort of an apex of Vanilla WoW endgame. Yeah, you're right. BFA does have a lot of different alternatives for endgame, and that's great. I think pet battles are great. Like, there's no reason not to have pet battles. Like, people can say that, oh, you don't like pet battles. Okay, that's fine. But is there really a reason to take pet battles out of the game, to not have them in the game? I don't really think so, personally. I think that's just another type of metagame. Same with the Brawlers Guild. I don't think that they should take the Brawlers Guild out of the game. I feel like overall it's been a positive to the game. Mythic Plus, that's more complex, but I think that a lot of people at least would agree that Mythic Plus is a good addition, although many probably would not because of just the repetitive nature of it. I actually like the fact that BFA and Legion had multiple forms of endgames, but the problem is that the motivation to pursue those endgames and all endgames was flat. There was no reason to pursue them, and the accomplishments you got out of them were meaningless. Now, that's really the issue. Yeah, there should be more ways of doing an endgame, but the ways that Blizzard went about it and what they had to do to the current forms of endgame to make those other ways viable ended up hurting the game more overall.
1. AoE looting. Now, I'm actually a pretty big advocate for no changes in Classic WoW. I want Classic WoW to be as inconvenient as possible,
That's
And
right.
the best way to accomplish that is to have as little changes as possible.
That's right.
Because all of those inconveniences kind of give Classic WoW its charm.
That's right.
And really makes you appreciate just how many good changes have been made to the game. Like when you level a brand new character in Classic and all of your abilities get dodged, parried, missed, blocked,
the
or
fuck
reduced
up.
through glancing blows, you realize it's hard enough just trying to hit a normal mob, in addition to everything else in the game. Normal mobs don't have anywhere near as much avoidance in the live version of the game as they do in Classic. And for good reason. It's annoying to have all your abilities miss like that.
That's true.
And I want that kind of system to persist in Classic WoW.
That's true.
I couldn't imagine all of my abilities being able to hit like they do in live. But if I were to make one change, something that's just convenient for me and me alone, and wouldn't affect the core gameplay of vanilla WoW at all, that would be to have AoE looting. Being able to loot everyone at once with one click, within the radius of a dead mob of course, is just so convenient that it's really hard to imagine the game without it. Now, I'm not saying they should add AoE looting to Classic. Like I said earlier, I want it to be as inconvenient as possible. But if they were to make one small little change, just add in one little convenience, something that wouldn't affect the game too much, I would definitely want AoE looting, as I think it's one of the best conveniences they've ever added to the game. In fact, I wish they had a system to just auto-loot by running over corpses so you don't have to click on anything.
I would
Looting
love
random, non-boss mobs is one of the most tedious things to do when running old content or leveling up. And one of the few things I like about islands is that you don't actually have to loot any of the mobs, and you can just
That's
run
true.
around and kill shit. I think many people would agree that AoE looting is great, and a no-brainer for the #1 spot on this list.
Nope. Here's why. The amount of time that it would take to loot different mobs was factored into the farming efficiency of different areas. So if you are able to loot all of the mobs extremely quickly, that indirectly creates certain different areas and makes them better at farming efficiency. So let me give you an example. Dead mines. So if you can do a dead mines run in, let's say, 15 minutes, and looting takes you 8 minutes, then you're effectively spending 23 minutes doing a dead mines run for that amount of money. Let's say you can do it in 15 minutes now, and it takes you 1 second to loot all of the mobs, or let's say 5 seconds, 1 minute, let's just be fair, let's say 1 minute, 16 minutes. That farming method is now effectively a third or so better, because you're saving all of that time for looting. Now that cascades down into a number of different effects on the game. Number one, it creates more inflation because each mob there is a humanoid and it drops more gold, so it's going to inject more gold into the economy more quickly. Number two, it's going to inject more profession materials into the game more quickly, which is going to throw off the balance between the different profession materials and how quickly you're able to obtain them. Let's see, what else is besides that? Professions, the green items. It's going to make leveling up and getting different items from your quests less meaningful and less important, because you'd be able to buy alternate items from the auction house for lower prices, because obviously the prices would be driving themselves down because you'd have more of those items injected into the economy and the same amount of people leveling, so obviously the prices would have to go down because the demand was staying the same. So there would be all these different ways that AoE looting would actually be very harmful to Classic WoW and would change the meta for farming in a lot of different ways. Okay? Now, I do want AoE looting in current WoW. I think AoE looting was great for current WoW. And if I could go back and have Blizzard redesign the game and have AoE looting, yes, I think they should do that. But I would never want it in Classic WoW. And I think that it has been a good change for the game. Does that make sense? Very, very small radius? No, because you just kill them on top of each other. Like, that doesn't even make any sense. No, I had no idea. There is actually a lot of reasons why AoE looting is bad for the game. Or not bad for the game, but AoE looting would change the game. And I don't want any changes to the game. And it's kind of like the butterfly effect, right? Where you add AoE looting and suddenly professions are easier to level and quest items don't matter as much because you're having more blue and green items injected into the economy in a way that they wouldn't naturally be in the economy because of AoE farming being more effective. So yes, I don't think AoE farming, and also more inflation too. There are a lot of different ways that it would all be effective. What are we talking about? Yes, of course. I want the Final Fantasy 14 system. Yeah, would you want AoE looting in WoW too? Absolutely. Yeah, AoE looting's fucking great. Fuck yeah, I want AoE looting. You think I want to sit around and loot every fucking mob? It's annoying as hell. Like, yeah, AoE looting is one of the few things that, I'm sorry, it's just so effective and so good, I'd still want it in a game. But I also don't want it in classic WoW. That's the way that I feel about it. Okay. But yeah, there's basically it. It's very, very complicated answer, but there's watching your Monkey News video, won't be disappointed. No, I haven't. Hey, Asmongold, what do you think about Classic if they add another expansion that's different than TBC? I think that would be a huge mistake, but I would be willing to at least see what that would look like. If they add an expansion that would be like kind of the same, like another diversion from TBC. I don't know what happened. Asmon never doing to anyone, but you just triggered me so hard. I couldn't cat out tier 11 because it became way too easy. Primarily because gear became too free. The badge system tier equivalent gear that started in late BC killed the game for me. Wildstar best raids. If you quit in tier 11 because of that, why wouldn't you have quit in tier 10 or tier 9? Like tier 9 and tier 10 had way more welfare gear than tier 11 or tier 12 ever did. So I don't think that's really fair to say, personally. Did not get invited to beta, or did I get invited to the stress test? And then inviting more people to the stress test because I did not get in this time? I have no idea. You'd have to check your email. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, like, so let's talk about this list. Well, let's finish the video.
Alright, and that's the end of the video. I made sure to only pick stuff that kind of existed in Vanilla WoW, and that they expanded upon. So I made sure not to include anything that was just straight up in addition to the game, like transmog. In case you wondered why I didn't include some other features on the list. If you have an idea for videos similar to this one, or know of features that have changed that make the game worse, I'd love to hear about them down in the comments.
Read these comments. I like this comment a lot right here. This should have been posted on April 1st. The fuck does that mean, poker? I don't even know what the fuck that means. Like, you seem to think that inconvenient means bad. None of this made the game better. You're right. Like, I just... Yeah, I disagree with all of this stuff. Basically every single item on this list.